now for the Black Firehouse Podcast, the only Ghostbusters podcast that discusses props, costumes, sets, and special effects, with your hosts, Austin Young and Dan Harshman.
You know, it's just occurred to me we really haven't had a completely successful test of this equipment.
I blame myself.
So do I. Let's get ready. Switch me on.
Good morning, Black Firehouse Podcast listeners. This is Dan Harshman, as always, with his co-host,
Austin Young.
And we are back for Session 7, Take 2, of our Ghostbusters Proton Pack roundtable. So, technical issues aside, how are we doing over there, Austin?
You know, we're doing as best we can.
At least this is only the second time of us re-recording this episode, not the 4 or 5 for Session 6 that we had to go through.
We'll see in an hour and a half.
We'll see. I have my eyes on the recording overview, just waiting for one of the little red dots to disappear or something like that to tell us that there's an issue. But as of right now, it looks like we're in good shape. So we, of course, do have our guests, Matthew Burkit and Mikhail Lynn, with us. Before we introduce them, though, some exciting prop news, Austin. You've been following Mr. Julian Legge's PKE meter build on Spengler's 1984 workbench.
Oh, yes. Yes, very much so.
It is an absolute labor of love. Even before he really started posting his updates there on the workbench, Julian has been meticulously working a Iona conversion into a Ghostbusters PKE meter, and it's gorgeous. It's definitely one of the most exciting props, I think, to have been built, because before his PKE meter, I think maybe there was a Silent Props build that was relatively close, but
yeah, I mean, I can only think of maybe 2 fairly movie accurate PKE meter builds that I've seen in 20 years.
It's definitely been a grail prop. I mean, I kind of feel maybe we would have been further along if Mattel didn't release their PKE meter.
Yeah, for sure.
The Mattel one is actually aside from it being a little bit larger and clunkier and not having the right inputs in the wings sticking out a little bit more, it's overall a really, really faithful recreation. So if you're still able to get your hands on one, it's an easy way to get a PKE meter. But
well, and the irony is that for me, like, I was really comfortable taking that around to cons or whatever as like my PK meter, because like, oh, it's a toy, if I break it, whatever, I'll get another one. And now it's to the point where it's like, it's so expensive to replace, I don't want to take it out anymore.
No, I have 2, and I constantly worry because I'm pretty sure the demo batteries are still in my second one, and it's like up in my grandparents' attic.
You got to pull those out. Like, that's
yeah, too late now. We'll see what happens, whatever. But anyhow, so the exciting thing is Julian has finished his replica, sans minor tweaks and adjustments, but he has released the STL files for purchase on Etsy.
Yeah, I saw that.
For like $21, which is a steal. So you get the STL files for printing your own faceplate and adjustments that would be needed for an Iona conversion. And then I've also heard rumblings that he is co-partnering actually with a member of my franchise, Jason Gleason, who has been working feverishly on doing streamlined electronics for a PKE meter. And from what I understand, they are now in cahoots to release a PCB board that will fit a real Iona. So that means in the foreseeable future, probably within the year, not only will we have Julian's amazing cosmetic upgrades for an Iona, but then we'll have a drop-in electronics kit for that same thing, which could make PKE meters much more accessible to fans who want to build one that is hyper accurate, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason why so many people haven't ever built a PKE meter is because it's so challenging and intricate, and there's so much to it, to do something that's fairly accurate.
Yeah.
So yeah, like a simplified electronics kit, I think would go a really, really long way, and it may it may replace the Matty PKE meter as the prominent PKE meter.
I think the thing I always kind of feel bad about is, other people have made PKE meters, and it's like, well, that's not right, and they're like, well, can you do better? And I'm like,
no.
That's I think the most exciting for prop news. Let's go ahead and introduce our guests, Austin.
Let's do it.
All right. So his reputation precedes him. Noted heavy, good friend of mine, big inspiration, of course, has really cradled me through a lot of my ABCs of learning what it is to build a Proton Pack and getting into Ghostbuster replicas, and really helped fire that passion, for me at least, on the screen accuracy fixation. Mr. Matthew Burkit, welcome to Black Firehouse Podcast.
Why, thank you, everyone.
How you doing today, Matt?
Edit in the applause right here.
I'm here to try to retell shitty jokes I did the first time and see if I can get through this in one piece.
Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I think last time I said I enjoy long walks on the beach and drinking Bloody Marys, but I'm also going to add avoiding exercise.
Well, then,
fair enough.
Wouldn't that rule out the long walk?
Yes.
Well, unless it's a very slow walk.
True.
Or a short walk, or a long walk off a short pier. Anyway, yes, I've been building Proton Packs since 2004 was the first one I built. I think I have documentation on like at least 12 of them. Some, not all of them mine. Some I've helped other people build and whatnot. I've been doing this for a long time. Definitely hyper focused on accuracy and trying to replicate what we saw on screen. Probably to the detriment of my own mental health at times. Just like going crazy, staying up too late, perseverating on that stuff. There's that word that I used last time that I know you enjoyed, Dan. But no, I definitely it's a love and a hobby, and I'm running out of wall space, that's for sure, for the work I've done.
We have such lovely purple walls. You wouldn't want to cover those up with cool Proton Packs.
Specifically, real Ghostbuster packaging purple.
Ah, well, great. So you can live out the rest of your days in a retail package.
Yes.
There's some serious psychological commentary going on there.
Well, to be fair, this is also my theater room, and I needed darker walls for the projector and stuff.
Fair enough. So our second guest, also a really, really fantastic builder. I always knew him as a screen name, which was Demon Vice Commander for the longest time, until somebody was like, "Hey, have you been talking to Mikhail?" I'm like, "I don't know who that is." Told me the screen name. I was like, "Wait, I do know who that is." Mikhail, Lynn, welcome, of course, to the Black Firehouse Podcast for take 2 of Session 7. How are you, bud?
Thank you very much. I'm doing great. Always a pleasure to chat and obsess over these details and minutia that, as Matt said, we sometimes drive ourselves crazy.
Well, we had so much fun the first time of recording this exact episode. I told you guys we would be doing it again.
I had a blast as well.
I almost feel like we cursed ourselves and we said we should do this again at the end of recording.
We'll just do the same recording once a week
for the rest of time. It'll be Session 7,
exactly.
Session 7, Session 7.
I'm gonna do a Ghostbusters fan film called Session 7, where a group of Ghostbusters are caught in a Groundhog Day loop and they can't get out.
Only if you stop production midway through and never release anything.
No. I'll start a GoFundMe to get it finished.
Oh,
and then I won't finish it.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Anyway, moving on.
So first things first, you guys have been following Julian's build, and Matt, you and I, we visited Julian back in 2014. He's an incredible guy, and has just become probably one of my closest friends.
He's okay.
He's okay.
Yeah, I've been friends with him since about 2013 or 2014. Yeah, prop business aside, he's a great guy.
He is a
know,
great guy. He lets sleep on the floor of his living room.
through an earthquake, no less.
Yeah, with a deadly spider in the room.
I don't
It's like
know.
there's only two things in this country that can kill you. It's this one type of spider and wild boar. And I haven't seen one of those spiders in years. And he literally looks down in his living room. He's like, "Oh, there's one."
Well, and that's one of the great things about I thought about Julian is like he came onto the scene about 2013, and like instantaneously his drive for quality and networking drew him like immediately to all of us. And he does that. He networks so seamlessly. He's such a sociable person. And then you have like all us introverts, and it's just like, who are you? It's like, well, I'm the wild New Zealander. I'm here to bring you out of your shell and talk about Proton Packs. Okay, Jules.
Are you ready to confuse my accent with British and Australians?
So what are your thoughts on the PKE that he's released and just, thereabouts?
I mean, it's flat out perfect. I mean, what more is there to say? I mean, he's been working on that shell for a few years now.
Seems like it, yeah.
Sanding and priming and filling and sanding, just this endless cycle, and it's perfect. I mean, the only other PKE that I've seen of that caliber was, I guess, the one that Silent Props did years ago. But did we ever get to really see that one in action? I've just seen photos of it.
I feel like I've seen video of it in action, but I also I know that there's details on Julian's build that weren't on the Silent one. Namely that nub underneath the adjustment.
The race section, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I did not know that detail until he was just like, hey, y'all are blind.
Well, and it's also neat that he's sharing all of this information. And yeah, PKE meters could be ubiquitous pretty soon. They've been kind of the holy grail because there are literally a lot of moving parts to it.
That's one of the other things that have been so great about his project is that it embodies, I think, the overall ethos of Ghostbusters prop community and builders is that 95% of the time, everybody shares their information, which you do not get in other prop building communities. There's some stuff that we can't share just because of existing, non-disclosure agreements. A lot of us will learn information, and it's not that we're intentionally hoarding it. It's that we don't want to get other people in trouble who are nice enough to share that.
Yeah, if like people's jobs are on the line or friendships, you don't want to sacrifice any of that stuff. And it's hard when you're having a discussion about these things and you say, oh, well, the detail is actually this, but I can't show you. I've been on the end of that, and it's, you find ways kind of carefully around it without violating anything, that you can still share the information.
That
MS Paint diagrams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember back when those terminal reality photos started making the rounds of the, all the Murray pack and all that stuff that was referenced for terminal reality. And I'd gotten a hold of them, but I couldn't show them to anybody. But it revealed, there's labels on the bottom of the gun track. And I remember being in the GB fans chat and being like, hey guys, there's labels on the bottom of the gun track. And they're like, fuck off. No, there's not. I was like, no, there are. And they've been staring us in the face the entire time, because if you look at the original one sheet poster, they are clear as day on the bottom of Egon's wand.
And then it was only a few years ago we found out those gun track labels were actually from a label on the containment unit.
Are they? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
It's that one. It's on the Ecto 1A as well. Like at a glance, it always reminds me of like a bank check. It's kind of what it looks like. But yeah, the few labels, the slow blow and all that.
Interesting. I'm going to have to go back and research that, as I just mentioned that every time I say that, I never do.
Yeah, I think I have a photo of that label somewhere from the car.
But he can't share it, so don't ask for it.
Can't share it. Nope.
That's okay. Just MS Paint.
Yes.
Or you do what Julian did when showing the pop mech and create an entire Maya production out of it.
Well, he is he is a visual artist
He is.
artist for Weta, so he has the
Yeah.
skills to do that shit.
He's a keyframe artist.
Well, and
Get it
honestly,
right.
that's more useful than if he had just shown a photo, because the inside of the superhero is just a mess. It's like a rat's nest of wiring. That's not really going to do anyone much good. But yeah, an actual animated schematic is perfect.
And Matt,
Yeah, it's greatly appreciated, that's for sure.
You got some hands-on time with that pack.
Who, me? Yes.
Yeah. Very
Yes, I did.
Very jealous.
Yeah, I got to handle that pack and the Murray pack and several of the semi-heroes and also the Universal Studios pack as well.
Which is
the
an
best one of them
interesting
all.
item.
Yeah.
I mean, I love
freaking
the
reflectors on it.
I love the Universal Studios pack. I'm just, it's such a strange thing that Hollywood sent back to Sony and said, "Hey, this is yours." It's like, nope, it's not.
And I was gonna say it was really funny too, because like when I first visit the archives, the head of the archives was following me around with a notepad, writing down everything I was saying, and he said, "Oh, thank God for telling me that that's from Universal, because we're going to start loading these things out for like museum exhibits. And I want to make sure we don't put that one out."
I mean, it's an interesting thing because, especially if you look at like the evolution of the Universal packs, where they start with stunt castings, fiberglass stunt castings, and they just get worse and worse. Shallower and shallower vacuum form pools, and eventually just like Tupperware containers screwed down to a piece of plywood on a camping frame.
Oh, speaking of bad, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but does anyone remember those Proton Packs that Sony had commissioned for the video game release? They were at the trade show. They had like the garden hose loom cable and such.
Yeah. You and I talked.
Those were.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, and also one of those I think was also used in Zombieland.
See, that's what I thought. I couldn't remember for sure, but Mikhail brought it up to me a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's in Zombieland." And I went Googling, and I could not find any photos of them anywhere.
I don't remember those at all.
They're strange.
They're only at San Diego Comic-Con though, because they also had like a booth at New York Comic-Con, but they had local people working that. But the one at San Diego Comic-Con, they had those commission packs sitting there.
Didn't they have like screens attached to them to show footage of
that? I don't remember. I don't remember.
It honestly wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if they stuck like 20 screens in the Ecto-1 around the same time for that same purpose, so
yeah. Oh, goodness. So, all right, guys, we're gonna continue on. We're gonna go into what's on our workbench. I already know the answer to this from last episode, but we're gonna talk about it again because it's what our listeners want.
What is that thing you're doing?
It's technical. It's one of our little toys.
The Proton Pack is not a toy.
I guess that's right.
Austin.
Phoebe Pack.
Matt.
Phoebe Pack.
Mikhail.
Phoebe Pack, and I finally put thrower lights and sound in my reboot pack.
Mikhail, you get to start. So you're working on a reboot pack.
Well, I've been working on a reboot pack for about 4 years now, and it, I'm not going to get into the politics surrounding the movie, but I enjoy it. It's fun, and the equipment is really neat. It's visually very different from anything we've built, and as neat as those packs are aesthetically, they are very badly engineered. They're an absolute nightmare to build, and I've built 3 of them, and I will never build another one again.
So
you say that.
What? Yeah, you say that, but me and Austin over here. So what's the remake pack? What makes it so difficult to build?
Well, the difficult thing is, unlike the original hero packs that are a fiberglass shell with everything attached to it, these are all of the pieces are attached piecemeal to the motherboard, which in theory sounds great because you can kind of in the movie they upgrade them and add things to them, but when you're working on this limited canvas of you have to fit it, you have to make everything fit. It also, every part kind of locks every other part in place. So to do any maintenance on the pack, you have to virtually take the whole thing apart.
Oh my God.
Like the Faraday cage is like wedged right there in the middle. And you have to take all the project boxes off, the toolbox lid, all of that. And then
I thought they just slapped that thing down on it in the film.
yeah, they sort of do that. Well, the one in the movie, that was a partially built prop that
Yeah,
they
I'm
did
just
that for.
yeah, and I'm also just teasing. I've only seen that
Yeah.
movie once, and I got progressively more drunk through it. So
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's cool. The props are cool, but they're there's a lot of 3D printed parts. But the one that I was working on, I finished the pack in 2018, and then last year, well, during the start of the pandemic, I put the sound kit in it, and then about the past couple of weeks, I've been putting the thrower lights in. I cannibalized GB Fan's light kit to do the job, and yeah, it works out well.
Cool.
can I ask a legitimate question, not a snarky comment about the pack?
Uh-oh.
What audio wise, like I said, I've only seen the movie once. Is there any major difference audio wise for the pack?
It has some like the startup and firing sounds are slightly different, but they're close enough to where the average person isn't going to notice.
Okay. Did you do any editing to those audio files? Like,
yeah, well, I was able to get a hold of the actual production files
cool.
that they used, and I did a little editing to add some fades and transitions for when you switch between modes and such. And then I also put the covers of the theme song that plays during the end credits, the Walk the Moon version, just as a nice little fun change to it.
That's a good cover.
But
I always liked the soundtrack to that movie, but
yeah, it had some good ones in it, and but just a lot of stuff. Like I had to make my own harness for the pack. I did my own webbing and all of that. That was not fun, but the pack is wearable. It's but now with the sound kit in it, it weighs about the same as my GB1 and 2 hero packs. So.
The webbing I'm always torn on, and mostly I'm torn on. Like I like the visual aesthetics of it, it being brighter. It even looks more comfortable, but I hate that it's not on a frame. Even a more modern frame or a custom-made frame. The fact that and what you're saying is that everything is on the motherboard, which is essentially just a piece of aluminum with a bunch of holes in it, and everything is attached to that. So there's no way to take off something that's immediately in the way without taking the whole thing apart.
Isn't it held on by bolts and like fender washers?
Yeah, pretty much every part that's on the motherboard has they're mostly number 10 socket head bolts and washers on it.
Is there any stiff piece to the inside of that harness, or is it all just like the soft fabric?
Well, the harness is like a big Y shape, basically, that runs up the back. It has a kidney pad with 2 smaller kidney pads on the belt, and then the straps run up and they connect to the frame. For mine, I used a combination of Cordura and orange canvas for it. And I used car headliner, multiple layers to give it some padding. And even along my back, it's actually not that bad.
Well, the reason I asked is I have a Rocketeer pack as well, and it has a leather harness in it. I very specifically have mine a piece of aluminum lining the inside of the harness as well, so it can actually have something solid to bolt it to. So,
for attaching the actual harness, what I did is in the movie they used these. It's so stupid. They have these like 2.5-inch plastic washers that are holding it on, and even when the packs were out on display, those things got smashed and torn off. So I used some I made the accurate plastic washers, but underneath it I have a slightly smaller fender washer for the actual structural integrity.
Yeah, I was just curious.
And it's fine.
That's ingenious. I mean, it's a good way to have the look that you need while having real structural integrity underneath it.
Exactly. Because those packs are not well built. They were really cobbled together. I mean, both aesthetically they have that, but mechanically they're badly built.
Well, I mean, even the final iteration of the pack has like 4 different versions of the final cut of the movie. Like they were constantly changing them and fixing them throughout production.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned that you're also working on a Phoebe pack. How's that going?
That's going well. The pack itself is done. I still have to do the electronics in it, and I still have to install the lenses, but I usually leave the lenses off, the cyclotron lenses and such, so when I'm fiddling around with the electronics, you can kind of get in there and position it. but yeah, the whole pack is done. I still have to put the neoprene, the little that 6mm piece on the Alice frame padding. But then I just have the thrower and the loom to do. So, that'll be, who knows. I need to come up with another aluminum thrower for that before I can proceed. So I'm at a bit of an impasse.
Okay.
Yeah,
aluminum throwers are currently at a premium. Like I see that RJ is starting to kind of gear up again, and is getting a little bit of momentum on his workbench, which is really exciting.
It is,
but there's probably got to be 20 aluminum thrower requests on his bench right now.
It's like a 10-year wait, isn't it?
You'll get the aluminum thrower when Ghostbusters 5 comes out.
But that is something we've all discussed before. Is that sometimes for these premium parts, it is a waiting game.
It is,
and that's
and it's worth the wait.
You can.
Well,
yeah, it is.
And very specifically, you probably would want one for your Phoebe pack because he made them for the film as well. So that makes it for an accuracy standpoint.
Right.
So Matt, you're also working on a Phoebe pack, and you've posted some photos of that to Spengler's 1984 workbench. So where are you in your build?
I am the electronics in the pack itself are done. I'm still working on the ones for the thrower. Because I didn't have boards printed. I'm just doing point-to-point electronics that I'm doing myself with Arduino. And I messed up wiring together 2 MOSFETs for the flashing lights in the barrel. And I fried 2 pins on my Arduino, so I got frustrated and I walked away for like 2 weeks. I need to go back and desolder all that stuff and fix it, which I can do. I've done it. I've cobbled together enough electronics over the last 20 years. I know how to do it. Just frustrated me, so I had to step away. But that's the main thing I'm working on. I'm still waiting for it not to be below freezing in the Northeast of the United States, so I can actually paint. I also need to be able to get out in my workshop because I have to fabricate some more metal for. There's a lot of metal that's attaching the ion arm to the booster tube. So I need to cobble all that together as well. I have to fabricate that so I can get it welded. I also have a friend that's working on a 3D print for the booster frame because the booster frame is a little bit different from the ones in GB1 and GB2. I'm not sure if they scratch built them or if they 3D printed them, but since there's other 3D printed parts on the pack, I figured I might as well get that done too. So I'm in the process of getting that done. The snag that came in is my one friend has a resin printer, but the frame is slightly too big to be printed as a whole piece on the resin printer. So he has to print it in 2 pieces with pegs to like reattach it together. And then once I get that, I have to clean up one seam. I'll probably make a mold of it then too. So that's another thing I'm working on too. And then hopefully this spring I could actually paint it all and probably mess up all the weathering.
So your electronics, we talked about this the first time we did this around. You basically custom make your electronics from the ground up for all your packs.
Mostly because no one ever makes the electronics I want. So I end up just making them myself. That's what got me into it. I know a little bit of how to program Arduinos. I'm not the best at it. I'm an electrical engineer. I actually almost went to school to be a mechanical engineer until I went into psychology instead. But I have some programming experience as well. I learned up to C++ in high school. So, and Arduino programming language is similar to C++. So I can at least like brute force my way to make things work. So yeah, the electronics in the pack itself are really darn close to what they used in the actual screen use packs, minus I also added audio to it. So that's something I had to make myself. And I think I'm using the same bar graph that they used in the Afterlife packs I got from China. I think they're right. It's hard to tell. And a lot of the other components are also similar to what they use. So I'm trying my best to get it as close as possible. Because we only have like very fleeting images from a couple like TikTok videos of what the inside of the wand looked like. So.
Well, you also did the electronics for your video game pack, which is
for my video game pack. I know there's no video for this podcast, but I have a pack hanging behind me. I did all the electronics and the one behind me. Also, the ones in my semi-hero pack, I put them together, but they're actually the components from the actual dude that made the electronics for just GB2 semi-hero packs for the second film. So yeah, I do a lot of all that stuff myself.
So out of all the vendors that you're familiar with, whose electronics kit do you think plays closest as far as plug and play kits?
The issue is and I talked about this the first time we recorded as well, is that no one makes electronics like how they were in the films, because it's actually somewhat boring what you see in the film. A lot of vendors sell stuff that have a lot of extra animations, whether to it's to the power cell, like a loading sequence I've seen people do. And actually, I guess that's now screen accurate, because you can see that in Afterlife, because that's something they used for some of the stunt packs. I guess they used some off the shelf fan electronics. And then even on the thrower, like most pack, like there's only one pack that in the original 2 movies that had a moving bar graph, and it literally cycled up and down. And I think it went to full when you hit the vent light, and that's about it. It's very similar to, it's the same electronics that they used in the hero trap as well, is in the thrower of the superhero. But all the other ones, the bar graphs were solid, and like they had a blinking light on top, and then they had the flashing xenon strobes in the barrel, and that's about it. So it's not super. I mean, it's super exciting for like '84, like the very high tech electronics for back then. But like for fans now, everyone has a lot of different extra stuff in their kits. As far as who off the shelf now sells anything close to what was, like if you're trying to replicate what was in the original packs, but LED form. One of my associates that I've known, he goes by Prop Forge on eBay. He sells some lights that we designed back in 2011. I did the initial design and initial coding for it, but he is a lot better at creating actual printed circuit boards. So we has a collaboration, and I told him, hey, you can sell them. I just want the ones that I need for me, and then you can sell them if you want. So he still sells it. I think he's done some iterations since then to them, but they're still functioning basically the same way. I know he also created pack lights based off of design from Jack Dowd. He worked with Jack Dowd as well to create the pack lights. So if you want anything that's close to what you see in the GB1, but with LED instead of incandescent, I would go with those. But I don't know how often he actually has boards up on eBay.
Now, so if you're able to get one of the Prop Forge kits, is there a sound kit that it cooperates with, or are you looking at having to do custom
So
sound?
we actually designed it. It can work with the GB Fan sound kit. But then I also, I just create my own sound kits myself. But they do work with the GB Fans one. So
very cool.
Because the GB Fan ones are set up to take a signal, either a high or low signal from another kits. So we have output pins on the gun kit specifically to connect to that. So you can get it to work. Excuse me, you can get to work with a GB Fans kit.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And Austin, you're working on a Phoebe pack as well.
Correct.
How's that going?
It's going. I've been working on the metal bits, getting the booster tube cut and filler tube, beamline, PPD, all that stuff. Waiting on some other.
Hopefully,
parts.
someone sends you a bumper and a rear grip soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm getting real close to needing those. And I'm using a shell that Mikhail was kind enough to cast up for me out of his own mold, which is a wonderful shell, beautiful. He didn't cut out the hole for me to install the breaker switch, though, and I'm really upset about that. No, I'm kidding.
But I don't want the fun and joy of doing that. That's part of the experience of building the Afterlife pack.
My knuckles are still healing from scraping against fiberglass on the inside, trying to get holes drilled and a slit cut. But it's going. I'm in the process of trying to get hopefully some aluminum wands made for it. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm now that I've got the shell in hand and I'm getting some of the parts made, it's going along pretty quickly. I had a lot of the bolt-on parts hoarded already from the last year of research and all that. So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm ready to get it to a point where I can start screwing stuff down and painting and sticking labels on and all that jazz.
Very cool. So I've got a lot more conceptualization stages, making sure I'm adding more than I need to current projects. And I'm actually working with some of the guys over at the 3D printing part, because one of the packs I want to do, everybody's seen the inside of the cyclotron. Everyone's really excited about that new iteration, that new reveal of, hey, this is what the inside of a Proton Pack looks like. And a lot of people are doing prints and stuff like that for wearable ones. I'm not particularly interested in that. Hasbro's releasing their toy version of that, and I think that'll kind of cover that niche if I want to have like a display piece. I'm more interested in the Sentry Proton Packs. I think they're probably the most interesting visually thing to come out of Ghostbusters Afterlife. So I'm hoping in the next year or two to actually build a Sentry Proton Pack in one of the boxes that has a removable cyclotron. So I'm excited about that. And then for kind of funsies, I'm gonna do some repaints and touch-ups on target traps. They were like $20. They're all super light plastic. But I was looking at how they come apart. I grabbed them from for just table display. Easy ghost traps. You throw them out on the table at a convention. Everybody's like, ooh, you don't have to really do much about it. But I was looking at how they actually break down, and there's a lot of potential for interesting customization onto them, in which, the side panels kind of come off separately. So you have the option of sanding them down and probably, using rub and buff to make them look true aluminum. So I might dig out one of those and tinker around, because I'm held up with weather, much like Matt. Yeah. I'm waiting for good weather to paint. I have a lot of prep and Bondo on my IDW pack, and not a lot more I can do until I can actually get out and start painting stuff. And right now, 51 degrees, much better than what you have, Matt, but still not good enough to paint. I refuse to paint until I get to 61 degrees outside.
Well, what sucks where I live is like in the winter it gets like below 20, and then during the summer it gets like 90, but like with like 85 to 95% humidity, which also makes it difficult to paint. So there's like this sweet spot where I have to wait for low humidity and decent heat to be able to paint. And it's such a pain in the ass. One of these years, maybe I'll get fed up and actually build like a paint booth. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a pain in the butt, but it's also kind of fun, and at least it allows you to gather time to gather your thoughts on how you're going to tackle that. And then
just sit around and be angry.
Sit around and be angry. Well, it's like I'm always, telling friends or something, like, how long does it take to build a Proton Pack? I'm like, well, do you have everything? Because that's the big question. If you have all the parts,
it can take years.
Yeah, if you have all the parts and good weather, you could build a pack in a day or two. But if you don't have everything you need, and you don't have good weather, and you don't have access to all the tools ready to go, it's going to take you, 6 months, a year.
Yeah, I would argue, like, if I had everything sitting out, I could probably do it in about 4 days. It would be like 1 day to set up the motherboard, because that's a lot of drilling and tapping mounting stuff. The shell itself, like, you have to dry fit everything and take it off and paint it. That could be a day. And then probably give me two days to build a wand, because I have to get to build a wand, take it apart, like, paint it, put it back together, put electronics in, pull them out as you blow shit up, and then put it back together. So I would say if I had everything laying out in front of me and I had all my tools with me, I could do it in probably 4 days.
That would be a fun challenge. We should do that sometime.
Yeah. Well, I remember, here's a shout out to Fernando Hernandez. There was one year when we were going down to Dragon Con. I showed up to his house to drive him from Queens down to New York, down to Georgia. And I showed up, he's like, hey, so I have all my parts here, but my pack's not fully assembled. So I showed up at like 10 o'clock at night because I thought we were going to drive through the whole night. Well, we built a pack throughout the whole night. So that was fun. We finished painting up his pack, and then Mr. Chris Tilson, who he's not really part of the group anymore, but I'm still friends with him on Facebook. I remember him sitting down in the basement just cursing up a storm, installing electronics into a thrower for 8 hours.
Was that his tribute pack, or was that a different pack?
I think it was a tribute pack. Yeah, it's a beautiful pack, and it's a fun story now, and that's what I always say. Like, don't get me wrong, I was tired and frustrated.
No, everything with Fernando is a fun story.
Yeah,
he has nothing.
Yeah, and that's what I often say is, like, it might have been frustrating at the time, but it's a good story to tell now. So
it is. All right.
That would be a fun story, a topic for another day, but talking about last minute, late night builds, things going horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I have a good story for that.
I still have photos of my first throwing chicken Mark I, being put together the night before taking off for Dragon Con. So I'm definitely familiar with last minute builds. That would be a lot of fun. And I know Austin and I, right now the podcast is focusing around specific props, but we're definitely going to go into anything we could think of, spirit, fan builds, things like that. I know next session 8, we're going to introduce, props that are particularly exciting to us. I guess this week you could count Julian's PKE meter as that, but we'll be going into that. There's a lot of content that I'm excited about. I'm excited to see where this podcast can go. How about you, Austin?
I'm ready to dedicate an hour and a half to My Little Pony flash drives. That's what I'm ready for.
Oh.
Is this the wrong podcast for that?
Yes. You need to be on Yes Have Some for hour and a half dedications to My Little Pony merchandise.
I don't know that they would want me on there either.
I don't think they would, actually. Now that I think about it,
not.
they'd probably be like, nah, you can't come on here either.
Well, I'm going to start my own other podcast.
Let's do a podcast on only Alf and My Little Pony, and that's it.
I would do an Alf podcast.
I wouldn't.
For sure. You wouldn't?
No.
You don't like Alf?
No.
Oh, come on. Anyway.
No.
But he's back in furry form. Haven't you seen?
He's back, but in hog form.
Yeah, in hog.
Well, let's get into the meat of it. Let's go ahead and get started on our main topic, which is our roundtable discussion of Ghostbusters Proton Packs. We have some really excellent questions, so let's go ahead and do that.
Listen. You smell something?
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Why?
So, this is the roundtable part 3 of our 3-part podcast on the Ghostbusters Proton Pack. And last time, what we did is we just kind of talked. We, threw things at each other while we were talking about Proton Packs, things we liked, parts, particular packs that we were privy to. This time, I did something different because I didn't want it to get stale and us trying to remember what we had talked about, which is I went out to the community and got questions from people for all of us to discuss, which I think will make this a little more interesting and a little more roundtable-ish. So I'm excited about some of the feedback that we got and some of the questions that we got. But before we get into those questions, Matt, what's the Proton Pack mean to you, bud?
Well, as a child, it was a mystery to me. Mainly just because, with low quality VHS and whatnot, it was this black blob that had a gun on it that they could see on my 22-inch TV back in '89. And even the Omni pack or the Omni magazine, it was I know it's not this now, but as a kid, I always thought because the front grip was twisted, I thought it had sawtooth grip on it or whatever. Once again, I was a child, I didn't know what I was looking at, but it's just this huge mystery to me. It also blew my mind because it was so much different in the movie than it was in the cartoons, and even different from the toys we had. And I just couldn't get it all to line up in my head. I was just why are all these things so different? It's just this enigma. And then as an adult, it's become, I guess, an obsession, I guess would be a good way of putting it. I've built how many of them now at this point, but it's also, it helps me because, as I said before, I originally was going to school to be an engineer, and I went into psychology instead. I'm a clinical psychologist now, but I still have that need to flex that building and creating and doing math and figuring stuff out. So it's definitely my outlet for that. That's why it's one of my favorite hobbies. Just between that and I also play guitar, but it's just one of those things where it's a great hobby for me to still be able to flex those muscles from a mechanical engineering standpoint of just building and creating. So that's what it is to me now, and it connects me to friends as well.
Oh yeah,
everyone here, I would have never met if it wasn't for these things, and also even my friends I was hanging out with. Some of my best friends I was hanging out with yesterday, Adam Marish and Adam Marish and Jack Dowd. Yeah. I met them. They were the first 2 people I met when I wore my pack out in the community for the first time back for the 25th anniversary of Ghostbusters. So.
That's a great point that you brought up. I think Austin and I touched on that last episode as well. I have friends from growing up that I love. One of my best friends up in New York. I've known him since middle school, and then I have a another friend of mine, his daughter's my goddaughter, and vice versa. I've known him since I was 3. He's, like a brother to me. But the amount of friendships that I've made through Ghostbusters is incredible. I mean, hell, I met my wife through Ghostbusters, which I'm not sure if that's a great story or a sad story, but it's a story at least that has a happy ending, and I'm happy about it because I love the shit out of my wife.
You better.
Oh yeah, but I love.
He's saying that because she's
the...
standing right there in the kitchen.
She's like sharpening a knife right off screen.
No, she doesn't sharpen the knives. I have to do that. She just uses them. Mikhail, what does the Proton Pack mean to you, bud?
Well, I mean, not going to copy what Matt said. I mean, there are, it's this piece of iconography that everyone knows. It's brought so many of us together. These particular props. But for me, the Proton Pack it's kind of like the ultimate prop to build because it combines all of these disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be, a carpenter, an engineer, an electrician, a mold maker. There's even some sewing involved when I did my super straps, on my GB2 pack. But it combines all of these different disciplines. And I've also used, from a professional end, I've used my Proton Packs in my portfolio, and I've gotten a lot of different prop building jobs over the years. Like now I'm a prop builder for a theatrical company here in St. Louis. So the Proton Pack, it opens doors for friendships, for opportunities.
And you had mentioned though, mold making. Now you're one of the people that has not only their own mold, but you built yours from the absolute ground up.
Yeah, the original master for it, actually a friend of mine and I, Chris Weller, who's in the community, he and I built the wooden master, the Buck, and then I did a mold. I've done 2 molds of it. The first mold was in 2011, I think, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was following a YouTube tutorial, which was how to mold a Proton Pack. Perfect, right? Well, it was one of those part 1 tutorials where there was no part 2. And the technique that they were using it was terrible. They didn't come up with something useful. They didn't have the clay or the 2-part support jacket. They were just brushing the silicone on. And then I think they put the jacket on top of that, which can work sort of, but it was messy. But I did end up with 2 very serviceable shells from it. They required a lot of cleanup. In fact, one of those shells I turned into my the sort of prototype Phoebe pack I did back when we were still kind of figuring everything out. I know Austin did one, and I did one where we were just kind of taking guesses, and back in those fun days. But and then I remolded it in 2014, and I fixed some of the things that were inaccurate, like I removed the in filter that I had cast in. I took off some of the mounting plates for like the filler tube and such. But I need to make a new master, probably just from the ground up. We've made too many discoveries over the past, several years. And my mold, I think I've done 8 pulls from it so far. The last one was actually the one I did for Austin. And it's starting to get a little wear and tear, which my plan with the mold for whatever life is left in it, I'll probably try doing maybe some foam stunt casts.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Or I might make some shells that I can hack up to do some Sentry packs, because that's just what I need, a bunch of unwearable Proton Packs in boxes. I don't know. I've been thinking about those Sentry packs a lot. They are pretty neat.
I think they're incredibly cool.
They're a little melancholy in a way, because there's something just very desperate about them. Like Egon is out there all by himself, and he's trying to cobble these sort of half-assed packs together. It's the best he can do. Mm-hmm. There's just something really sad and melancholy about them.
It's definitely the saddest of all the Ghostbuster movies when you really start diving down into the minutia of what the story plots are saying. But you had mentioned that you removed the infilter, so I'm going to give the first question to you, Mikhail, which is this comes from Chuck Fisher. Now, one of the things Chuck is asking is dimensions, which I feel like those are out there.
Yeah, those are. Yeah, I mean it's a 3-inch outer diameter aluminum thin wall. Uh, really they're not that hard to make. If you can cut thin aluminum with a Dremel. But what I like to do when I make my infilters is I make a little tracing template out of paper where I'll cut the curves into it and get the exact fit onto my shell. Now, of course, every shell might be slightly different, but you're likely going to have your 1/2-inch cyclotron rim, and the bevel is what on the cyclotron itself is what, like an 1/8 inch or something. So they're pretty standard, but if you're making your own infilter, you definitely want to make a template and get it as close as you want. Or if you want it to be slightly off, I mean, the heroes are not.
No, they're not
a perfect fit. But
and how were they attached? Do you?
The infilters, there was a plate that they were tack welded to on the inside, and that plate was then pop riveted onto the cyclotron. And you can see some of that on the photos of the Spengler pack in its GB2 configuration, where it somehow got smashed off over the years. I mean, I don't really see, especially because the plate is still there. So I guess they broke the welds somehow.
That's what happens when you take a baseball bat to an end filter.
I'm honestly just more surprised that the fiberglass didn't shatter with those pop rivets over breaking the welds.
Yeah,
I know that it's because you would think it would be better to have if you had like mounting bolts and fender washers on the inside, but yeah, they're just
and specifically on that pack too, like you can tell it got knocked off, and then they tried to glue it back on, and it got knocked off again because there's a line of like epoxy around the edge too.
That goop all around.
There's epoxy on some of the others too, so it may have been a pretty common issue. I mean, it may be really tiny tack welds or something. Who knows?
And so they were pop riveted on. There was not the fake welds attached to the pack. They were flush or cast in. And how about the mesh in the infilter holes? Was there anything behind that, or was it just mesh?
Well, I mean, as for the superhero pack, from what I've seen of it, it's just mesh, but there's a bunch of dirt and grime and stuff that kind of creates the illusion like there's something behind the wire mesh, but it is actually just wire. And that's what they did on the Afterlife packs as well. And it looks a little weird when you can actually see through the infilter holes, but it is accurate. But then on the Venkman Hero pack, they took the mesh out, and they put either they clayed it up or they put like some sort of white filler in there, and then they cast it. But that remains on the Hero pack, so it's just solid white on the Venkman Hero.
Well, excellent. I mean, that answers all those questions. Our next set of questions, we have a few here, and this is from one of my personal favorite people. He runs the Ghostbusters reference library, which is Stuart Thompson. What an incredible resource! He's really put so much work into getting everything kind of in one spot. It's a shame it's not a website. It's that it's a Facebook page, but I feel like accessibility has become really great using Facebook. But Stuart Thompson here, Matt, this one's really for you. So he says, we all know that Matt had the amazing opportunity to visit the archives and see some screen-used packs in person. Are there any details which may not be well known about that you are allowed to share from your time with them?
Now, I guess I read that question online too, and I was trying to figure out, do you guys think he means like details on the packs themselves, or details of that visit I had? As in, like, how did that visit go?
I think details on the packs themselves.
That's what I figured too. I was double checking. I guess the biggest thing it is relatively well known because of all the packs that they had there or have been on display at some point, but like the semi-heroes are really cobbled together, and they did a lot of just like on like this gluing stuff together, glassing over things, and then spray painting and stuff like that. There's also a lot of glue on all the 2 hero packs as well. I think during GB1 a lot of stuff got knocked off. Like I know the superhero, the one resistor on the ion arm definitely got knocked off. I have a photo of Bill Murray wearing it without the resistor on it, and I think that's at the point where they start gluing stuff on. The other thing too, And this is like, I think you guys touched on it a little bit in your last video when you guys talked about this, the superhero, how it got taken apart and restored. The one thing that you guys didn't mention, because it was that, yes, a lot of the stuff was pop rivet on, but all those pop rivets were coming loose as well. Like not the injector tubes, the filler and the beam line. You could like literally grab them and just wiggle them around, stuff like that. They were completely loose. So that's probably a good thing for them to actually have drilled those out and fixed them. So there's a lot of like loose parts on those packs. Like it's one of those things where like they were thrown together like 6 weeks or something like that for the original film, and it still blows my mind that 40 years later, or almost 40 years later, like they're still most of them are physically still together on some level. Just blows my mind, like, because on some level they're really well done, but on the other hand, they're like there's like shortcuts here and there, and I don't know. I think the biggest thing was like there's a lot of loose parts in those packs. But a lot like a lot of the stuff's pretty much known now, as far as like the superhero, as well as the Bill Murray, the Murray hero as well. Like those are pretty well documented. I know the first time we recorded, and I think you guys touched on it before, the pack that I'm actually more interested. There's 2 packs I'm more interested in. It's the Omni pack or Zedmore pack, and the Stance pack. But we can probably talk about those a little bit later. But those are the ones that I still have some mysteries. But the other ones that I got to handle, they're pretty well known at this point.
Austin.
Dan.
What are the common misconceptions about the packs that you'd like to clear up once and for all? And I'll let you start with this.
They're not flat black. That's for sure.
No,
they're
not.
satin. I mean, I don't know if it's something of a misconception or if it's just something people do because they don't have a better way to attach it. But like going back to like the infilter, people put fake welds, around the attachment points, and I don't really know where they got started. I don't know if that is a misconception. People thought that's how they were, but I still see that it's still really prevalent. Yeah, I mean they just sit flush. There's no welds there.
So I think where that genesis of that comes from is in GB1 on the booster tube, they did have like this fake weld along the edge of the bottom of the booster tube, and the EDA, and that was taken off at some point. You can see some of the packs, like, they never repaint them. There's still like the little like zigzag lines of that fake weld being pulled off there. I think it was literally just hot glue.
I think it was hot glue.
Well, the Omni never had that, did it? I don't think
that one I have a hard time because I don't have good photos of. But like,
right.
I know both the hero or the superhero and the Murray pack at one point had them. You can still see like the zigzag where it was removed. I think the Stance also had it too. I don't know if it's still on there or not. I'd have to look at my reference, but
the Spengler and Stance have it. Does the superhero had it? But they obviously, when they took it apart for the Anovos project, I wonder if they put that back on there, or did they just throw it away?
They just got rid of it.
Yeah, they got rid of it. The earlier photos I have, though, it's still there.
Yeah,
and it's definitely like hot glue.
Yeah, I think the Venkman had it because on the photos, of the pack post GB2, you can see where there's like a little residue, or that might have been clay, but I think it might have been on there.
So, major misconceptions, Matt.
Yes. I mean, one of the big ones is how the front handle works.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think you guys, I don't remember if you guys talked about last time. Yeah.
Such a big one.
Yeah. Well, even I got into it with someone about the even the ones in the Afterlife pack, if the front handle rotated at all, and yeah, it's so the tip extends by, there's a green lever that's right next to the trigger box on the back rear of the wand, and then the front handle just twists. It can rotate roughly about, I would say, about 60 degrees, not quite 90. And I'm not sure why they did that. Maybe for comfort. I'm not sure. That's the argument I hear a lot of people say, but it definitely can rotate, and it doesn't affect the extending of the clear tip. So that's a huge misconception.
It is a huge one. That's still, again, like the infilter weld, and we're talking about where the infilter meets the actual cyclotron, where it meets the pack, not on the top. Mikhail, any that you can think of?
Misconceptions about the packs. The one I see a lot is that the pack, that all of the components are just made from found junk. That seems to be pretty common. Just stuff, because it's funny. The packs, they were cobbled together and they weren't cobbled together. They had a lot of highly detailed machined parts. A lot of resin cast pieces, but it wasn't just, oh, let's slap these electrical boxes together. There seems to be a lot of that, and I think people sometimes dismiss the Proton Pack as being an easy prop to build because it's just cobbled together from junk.
Yeah, I think no, and I absolutely agree with you. I see that all the time. It's like, oh, this is just a bunch of military surplus stuff slapped together. I'm like, this, and I think people really get off on that idea that because there's an Alice frame, that the rest of it must be military in nature as well. Because they're wearing jumpsuits and pistol belts, everything must be military. I'm like, that's kind of the limit. I mean, yeah, you have the night vision goggle frames, but I mean, outside of that.
But as for the pack itself, I mean, there's the crank knob.
But the crank knob was even used in anything that Raytheon produced crank knobs for.
Right.
So, electric train sets.
Right.
Yeah, the thrower is not made from a choo-choo train.
Well, the train.
It does have a track on it.
It does. Well, speaking about the crank knob, there was the versions that were on the model train kits were not the actual military spec ones. They were kind of cheaper knockoffs, which they don't have the little core with the set screws. But cosmetically, they can work just fine. I've built a pack with them. But what else is military grade on the pack? I mean, not really.
No.
I mean, they have a lot of aircraft stuff.
Right.
Like the bar graph was as out of an airplane. So I think my guess is that ribbon cable was probably from an airplane as well.
Yeah.
At least the one on the GB1 packs. We don't know what the source of that was yet, but still, like,
we talked about that.
But they're getting more into military grade industrial stuff, and not necessarily like surplus stuff that someone would find at a surplus shop or something.
I found this radar dish at a military surplus, and I just slapped it on my Proton Pack.
I think one of the ones that still sticks out for me, and we've talked about this on this podcast before, is hockey pucks as the spacers, or any kind of pre-made. It's just wood. Good God, it's just wood, guys. That's one of the biggest ones. I mean, I absolutely understand the wisdom behind chopping up a hockey puck real fast to get that tape.
Shock absorber.
Yeah, but
well, you
don't want that stuff flexing anyway.
No.
Yeah,
right.
Because that's why everyone's Alice, like their knockoff Alice frames snap, because it's too much flexing. Well, I've seen one like literally fall off someone's back and shatter in a parade in the middle.
Speaking of those knockoff frames, I love that we discovered that fourth mounting point on the Afterlife packs, because on mine it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, mine too.
On that. Yeah. I mean, honestly, they could have had them in the originals. I mean, even though the original frames are pretty solid, that is a smart point to have that upper attachment. And you can't even really see it. It's hidden by that oversized foam. Yep. So yeah, that gave me a lot of peace of mind, because as soon as I had just my 3 points on there, that thing was flexing and wobbling. Yeah.
Austin, you were going to add something?
Just that, like, I can appreciate outside the box thinking, like when it comes to like the hockey bucks, but like you also have to be open to the idea that your idea is probably not correct either. Like, think outside the box, but don't get so married to the idea that you won't consider other options. Something that I personally am working on being better at, because we all get our own opinions and what we think is correct, and at the end of the day, to be honest, we really don't know a whole lot. I mean, we know a lot. I
was going to say a great example of that is that hose on the Phoebe pack, from the wand to the pack. That fuel line hose.
Yeah.
I'll admit, I was one of the people who's like, why would they create that for the prop? Like, when you could just buy something off the shelf. Why would you spend time doing that?
To torture us, of course.
Well, and then when we actually got the concept, the making of book, it made sense, because the person that was doing the concept art was literally taking, like, photoshopping an actual piece from like a image on like Google search and just putting it on there. And then because they couldn't actually find that piece, they just like made their own. And that makes sense. No,
I mean,
but
especially if it's a small element, a very small element, but if it's something that like Jason looked at and he really liked it and he was set on, we need to have that on there, you're gonna make it if you can't find the real thing. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to make it work.
And that's an example of, even for myself, being like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like initially, I didn't think that was what it was, but I'll concede that I think it makes sense.
Well, and also when you're working on a production like that and you're given, this reference material and you're told, build this is what the art director wants, you recreate it to the best of your ability. But Ghostbusters Afterlife was a unique production because everyone involved in it was hugely passionate about it. And everyone went out of their way to work on all of these little details. So, the people building the packs, I mean, that's obviously a dream job there. I think they were willing to go the extra mile and make that little stencil for the hose.
Even just from like a continuity standpoint, to me, it almost makes more sense to just make a bunch of pieces of the exact section you need than track down and have to buy however many, possibly hundreds of feet of hose that you're not going to use just to cut off one tiny section.
Right. So our last question here from Stuart is, during the newly released dailies, we can see Egon working on a couple of throwers on his workbench, which seem to be in mid-construction with various parts missing, lack of decals, and transfers. Do you think these were the same hero throwers taken from a couple of the packs and redressed later, or do you think they could possibly be extra throwers not linked to a specific pack, made specifically for those shots, given that they had already filmed with the fully decked out wands in New York before shooting those scenes in LA? That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I've ever even thought about, so I like that he brings that up, but I would doubt that they are the original wands off the actual packs. I would say they're probably backups or prototypes or something.
I've never even given thought to the idea. I've always just associated, okay, this wand goes with this pack, that there could be packless wands out there someplace that they built.
They're in the Sony mind. They have to be.
And the one thing I'll say, so I don't know the actual genesis of this one thrower, but I remember seeing photos back when like the HMS shell first became a thing, or legacy shell, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I know some people don't like calling it the HMS. Anyway, I remember seeing photos of not only the behind the scenes of them taking that stunt pack and doing Bondo cast from the original mold and cleaning that up, but there's also a picture I have of someone holding a half-built metal thrower with a red push button for the trigger for the fire button, or for the activate or intensify button. That's it. That may or may not have been a production piece as well. I don't know if it was made by HMS when they were making that mold as well, or if it was actual production piece from Ghostbusters as well.
Interesting.
So I don't know how, like I said, I don't know the genesis of that. It could genesis of that particular wand. It's unpainted. It's only part of it. It's not the whole thing, but it very well could have just been a fan made one or made by HMS, but just it was a photo that I have with all that other stuff. I think it was being sold when HMS was selling off all their molds and stuff like that. That's how that particular mold got into fan hands. So I don't know what. Yeah. So it very well could have made more than just the metal wands they had. So.
And it makes sense too that they made additional wands, because there could have been wands where, well, this one just isn't up to snuff for a hero pack. We miswelded this, or we had to test this and that didn't work, so let's use it for set dressing.
Or I mean, it's also entirely possible they were made specifically for those scenes, for him tinkering. I mean, like, that would be the responsibility of the prop department to, come up with those items.
Harold, do me a favor and poke this with a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Don't mess up the paint, though. We got to put it on one of the packs later.
Austin, I'm going to throw this one at you. This is from James Brija. Why the heck does a synchrotron get mislabeled as a cyclotron, and why does it need CRT emitters? Aren't CRT emitters for television?
I'm the wrong person. I know nothing about any of this. because it looks cool as far as the CRT emitters go. Like again, like Forrest Gump, I'm not a smart man. I don't understand how any of that stuff works. I've tried to wrap my head around the mechanics of the cyclotron and how you have a spinning light, but you have 4 separate like emitters or whatever. Like, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But then you have the inner cyclotron piece that also has a light that spins in it that I thought we were supposed to assume is what's generating the red light, but then how can it shine through those lenses if those lenses are capped off with those CRT emitter things? Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it looks cool. And I think that may be the case here, where there may have been some real science kind of sprinkled in terms of like how it's supposed to function, but like I think more than anything it just makes something that looks cool.
So wait, you're telling me that like Proton Packs are real and you can put them on your back and they make sense and you can shoot rubberized light out of them? Whoa!
I have converted an old
Absolutely.
1987 television to fire proton streams.
Actually, so little, it's still about the Proton Packs, but this is more about the special effect attached to them. I'm actually curious to go back and look at Afterlife and slow it down and see if they animate the stream the same as in GB1. The stream was like electricity comes out and then the orange piece like comes in and they connect at the tip.
No. So Matt was also curious of the same thing. But the definitive scene that tells me no is when they are chasing Muncher, and right before they get to the bridge, they have that very much the stream reaches out and then captures him, but it has the blue electricity. But I haven't gone back and looked at the other scenes, so there's still a chance that got snuck in there. But,
now hang on. The gunner seat's a snub nose, so it could operate completely differently.
The one thing I did notice though is they actually animate the stream inside the clear tip as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that.
I like it.
Did you?
I mean, it made sense with modern special effects to do that, a little more sophisticated.
I always liked the idea that there was something in the trigger tip that condensed everything down, that you were just seeing raw light in the tube. So I didn't like the micro stream in the acrylic tube. Personally, that's me. I know a lot of people did. They liked seeing even the stream there. I was just like, I don't know. It reminded me of Zordon from the Power Rangers. I don't know why, but
there's a little floating head inside that tube as the pack's being fired.
Dan Aykroyd, find me teenagers with attitude.
Were you quoting the Bryan Cranston version of Zordon?
So we're going to move on to the next set of questions, which comes from Joseph Galina, who's working on a really, really fantastic replica as well. I know he's he's having some fun with the wand.
Yeah.
Let's see. Matt, I'm going to send this one over to you. What were the color of the wires going from the flash bulb through the banjos in Ghostbusters 1, and were they different than the black and red we see in Ghostbusters 2 clean?
So I'm pretty sure it depends on which thrower you're looking at.
Agreed.
I think they were like, I want to say it was like 26 or 28 gauge like wire, and they were like, I think they most of them were white with a colored stripe on them. I think, if I remember correctly. I might be mixing that up. It's been a while since I looked at that. That might be the Afterlife pack too. I don't remember. Like, it's been a while since I looked at that, but they definitely were different depending on which pack you're looking at. I think they literally just grabbed from spools of stuff as they're wiring stuff together, because a lot of that stuff you had to kind of wire together after the wires came through the body of the thrower. So I'm pretty sure they wired everything up after that. So even like they put the hat light in there and the push button, and they soldered onto those and stuff like that. And no, I think it was just different depending on which pack you looked at.
Well, I know specifically the Spengler pack has blue and green wires coming out of the flashbulb. Most of the others, I think, are just black and red. I'm not sure.
It was black and white coming out of the superhero. So
yeah.
I wonder if it's a form of identification for each thrower. Like, at a glance, you can tell.
Too hard into
I mean, you never know. Don't they
I
have?
mean, it's true. You
They
never
have numbers
know.
stamped on them, so
Yeah, but that seems more reasonable than, hey, grab me the red and brown wired thrower.
yeah, but
That
you
one goes
can't.
to
Grab me
You
Burkit.
number
can't see
two.
the numbers stamped in it.
Ah, look, number 2.
Right.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. Whatever.
Well, to touch on the numbering, it's interesting because we don't really see, the numbers aren't that prominent on the packs and the throwers. I mean, on the throwers, we just have the little stamp
Yeah.
on the and then the numbers that are like on the Venkman, we don't know if those were from the production or if that's just Sony, how they archived them, like with the number 1.
I can actually tell exactly how they archive at Sony. So they actually use an invisible
Mhm.
ink. So they actually write. They have because I could barely notice it on the inside. So on the inside of the on the bottom of the thrower for the superhero, when you take the plate off, there's that lip there on the. It's actually written on there, and because I pointed out, I was like, "Hey, what is that?" And he was like, "Oh, you're not supposed to see that."
Details. Hey, that would have been a perfect answer for a question we had about 15 minutes ago.
You're
Matthew.
welcome. Well, I just thought about it now because it wasn't. To be fair, that's something that Sony added like 25 years later when they actually got everything back from Planet Hollywood. It wasn't a thing that was actually in the prop in the movie.
So I'm gonna take this next question from Joseph, which is Jason said he had a screen use Proton Pack from '84 in his house, and that he was ashamed to admit that he treated it horribly as a child and destroyed it. Do we assume that this was Winston's pack? No, it was a stunt pack. It was definitely one of the foam stunt packs that Jason brought home. I cannot.
Actually, I don't even know if it was a full pack. From what I read, little
Could have
clips
just been
from Jason,
thrower.
just thrower.
Yeah.
And it's highly possible it wasn't even screen used, but just an additional casting that was made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mikhail, this one I think would be great for you. Why would they go through the trouble of fabricating all metal parts for each hero instead of making a mold from the superhero and making resin copies like they did in Ghostbusters 2? It's strange that they wouldn't at least cast molds of the wands, which would have been way easier than fabricating all those individual metal parts.
Well, yeah, that would have been easier in a sense, but the reason that those wands still survive is because they were durable. If they had done Ghostbusters 2 style wands back in 1984, they would have been completely trashed at the end of production. And particularly when you only have, they only built 5 hero packs, of course, that we know of. But, so there isn't a lot of room for stuff to get broken because that can slow down production. And, that's, money is constantly ticking on a film set.
Mm-hmm.
And, actors are very, very rough on props. You hand them something, they will utterly trash it if it's not welded, bolted, solid steel or whatever. And on Ghostbusters 2, we saw, a lot of those props didn't survive. So I think they had the foresight to know that these things have to be built to last. Mm-hmm. And,
well, and I'd also add too, like, they need to have electronics in them. They needed moving parts in them. Like to do that with, even if they did a 2-part mold like they did for the semi-heroes in GB2, like being able to clean up the seams and be able to have them hollow enough and sturdy enough to actually have all the moving parts and fit the electronics and stuff like that, I think is a necessity just for the what they need them to do on screen, that they had to go with metal for at least the wand. And at least with the pack, all the metal parts, if they would have made molds of them, they would have been they probably would have been solid resin at that point, and they would have been heavier than the aluminum parts are now. So they probably they were already creeping in on how heavy they were, because I think they had like a motorcycle battery or something like that inside the original one, so that already made them extremely heavy. So they were probably trying to cut weight down as well.
Well, not only that, but like
aluminum
you think about like a production line, like to me it seems like it would be much quicker and easier to line up a bunch of aluminum tubing and just cut it in the length you need real quick, than worry about making a mold and then having to do castings and cleaning up castings and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if they had someone that was half decent at welding, it's probably quicker for them as well. No, I mean, it's like, I'm not a welder, but I have family members that weld, and watching them do it, if they only do it every once in a while because they work in a body shop. But like someone actually is trained to do it and does it every day could probably like knock those things out, like all of them, at least all the parts on the pack within a day, and then probably take another like few days to do that.
Right. Whereas if you were making molds of those, like say if you made only one mold of a filler tube, you can only cast one at a time. That's going to slow you down. Or do you spend all of the money and make 10 molds of a bunch of filler tubes, and then just fabricating them, a professional welder could just knock those out. It'd be easy.
Austin,
Yes.
what is one Proton Pack secret you wish you knew the answer to?
Oh. I mean, the GB1 ribbon cable, I want to know what that is.
Yep.
Like, I would love to definitively like identify that and, fingers crossed, find a source for it.
That would be lovely.
To me, that's the biggest mystery of everything, is what that ribbon cable is. So yeah, that's my pick for sure.
Yeah, I know that's a solid pick. Mikhail, how about you?
For me, what I would like to know is what is the exact origin of the bumper? Because we know it's inspired by that radar assembly, but we don't know if they made a master based on that, and then we know it's cast in resin, but if they made like a replica of that and then molded it, or if it's from a different radar kit, like we see what looks like there might be some wood grain in it, so it's really hard to tell. But I'd love to know what that piece is, because it's so specific that it has some lineage to something, some sort of a bracket or something. But
I feel like it's probably scratch built.
Yeah.
It's obviously inspired by something.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the master goes, surely they, it's scratch built to fit the shell that they made.
Well, and then the little anomaly, it was actually in the photos that I found when I photographed the Venkman pack, is that you have those little lengths of copper wire.
Yeah, the armature wire
there, which I guess he would have inserted those into the mold while it was still curing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
Well, even like the semi-hero bumpers also had like foam inside.
Yeah.
They were like a really thin resin, and then they filled them with that expanding foam.
Yeah, the armature wire, to me, it's pretty standard practice to reinforce it. I don't know. I feel like I've heard from professionals and stuff in the past that the resins they had back then were nowhere near as durable as they are nowadays. So yeah, I can totally see them putting armature wire in it just to prevent them from just snapping, if they bumped into something too hard or whatever.
Matt, same question for you.
I'm going to cheat. I have two different things. The first one, we know that the shock mount's a bellow. I would love to know what that was actually out of.
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like one of those things where it's probably something ridiculous, like in the Star Wars prop building, where like the top of the Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsaber is out of a freaking jet engine.
Yeah.
I have heard that the bellow is out of a Volvo. And
I've heard a couple different. It's definitely I think it's definitely a thermostat bellow. I think it is probably filled with probably alcohol or something like that as it expands when it heats. So that's the one thing. I just don't know what. I would love to know what that is out of. And then the other thing, which you guys actually talked about last time, because you stole from me from the previous time we recorded this, was the side knobs on the whatchamacallit, on the Ray stance pack. I would just like to know if they were if they had knurling on them or not.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
Yeah, that is definitely something I'd like to know the answer to. So 5, and I'm gonna pose this one to all of you as well, but I'm gonna answer it first. If you could spend an hour with one Proton Pack and in any time period, and we're free to tear it down for answers, which pack at what time would it be? There's no secret for me. I want to take a look at that superhero in 1983. I want to look at it from every single angle. I want to be able to open it up, see exactly how it ticks, what holes were original to it, how precisely everything was put onto it. We have a lot of those things that are answered now, but so much of it is still kind of fuzzy. Austin, how about you?
The Race Stance Hero Pack in 1983 or 84. That's what I want.
I think this is also answering what our favorite Proton Packs are.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. Mikhail.
Oh, I don't know, Spangler Hero Pack, probably,
Mm-hmm. 1983 as well, 1984.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yep. And Matt, you have two answers. You're going to cheat a little bit for this question.
I was going to say Superhero and Bill in the Murray pack back in 2014 would probably be my choice. That's because I actually did that. Anyway.
Oh, here's a humble brag
no,
from Matthew Burkit.
No, it'd probably be the race dance pack. Honestly, anytime.
Really?
It doesn't matter. I think for me, either now and being able to compare it internally to like other packs that we know the internals of, or like 88 or 89 or even in 83. At any time, I would just like to be able to actually like open up. And look.
I'm surprised, Matt. I thought you would have gone straight for the Omni pack, the Zedmore pack.
It's an interesting pack, but like I'm partial to the race dance in general. But like the Omni pack is also very cool too. And we barely know anything about it. And even like I think there's like only one shot in GB2 that Ernie Hudson's wearing it. It's when they're all standing in front of the firing at the art museum. And I think the only way we were able to confirm that was from the paint job on the booster tube or something.
He has it in the courtroom scene as well.
Is it in the courtroom scene?
I mean, you can see it in a few distant shots, but there's a black and white behind the scenes shot where Ray is in the background wearing the pack, and you can see the two the rub marks on the power cell fins that are illuminated.
Oh, I'm talking about the Omni pack.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's only one shot I think that it's in GB2.
No, he wears it in the courtroom actually. It's the shot where Egon is getting the trap, and he says, "Ray, behind you," and Ray, because you can tell that the pack.
Well, that's the stance pack.
No, it's not. You can tell because it has the clippered hex on the ion. So that means it's either Superhero or Venkman. It's not Superhero because it has the traditional mounting point in the EDA. Not the Venkman because it has the infilter label still. You can also tell it's a little fuzzy, but there's the painted the bolts, the two bolts for the EDA. They have the same paint swatches on them, and there's like one other detail, but I'll have to find that screen cap up.
Yeah, I'll have to screen cap it then because I have like digital copies of the film. I'll have to look at that because I only thought it was in when they're all standing there, and I thought Ernie Hudson was wearing it when they're all firing at the art museum, and that was about it.
Yeah, sadly that's the only like detailed shot of it in the movie.
Yeah.
And so we're going to jump to the Afterlife packs. Matt, I'll give this one to you. What is your favorite part of the Afterlife Proton Packs, and what are some of the details you think they could have improved on?
So initially is the thing that I thought was the most dumb, but now I'm actually kind of like it because I've built it now. But it was the spinning cyclotron. Like to me initially, I was like, why make it so complicated to have a spinning bulb on the end of an arm spinning around in there? Because that's super complicated compared to like 4 blinking LEDs. But since I've actually built it, I definitely enjoy that now. I think one of the things I realized after building it was like the benefit to it is it's a really simple circuit in the sense of like you're literally just putting power to a bulb and putting power to the motor, and that's it, and it can be 12 volts. So I could understand now why they might have done that because for ease of like wiring up and stuff like that. But from a construction standpoint, it's more difficult than just the LEDs, like 4 blinking LEDs, like a lot of fans do. But yeah, that's probably my favorite thing. Followed by I like some of the idiosyncratic like parts that were added to the Phoebe pack, like that cannon connector that is really hard to find and stuff like that. And even the shotgun grip on the wand is interesting to me because I've made one, but like I'm still curious if that was from a found part or not.
Sure, Austin.
I really like the heat sink on the side of the cyclotron or the sync generator. I think that's a really cool addition. The rat's nest of added wires around the clipper disc and stuff are something that took me a while to warm up to, but like I really like them now. I like the added visual, it adds and the the story it tells. Just Egon's doing everything he can just to keep this thing going. And I really, just kind of all of the added details I think are really neat. I'm not so much a fan of the ion arm switch. I prefer the crank generator switch. I think it's in a more accurate, I'm air quoting here, accurate spot to where Egon reaches in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it's not so visible. So I think if they'd have kept that original switch, I would have preferred that. And I really would have liked if they had kept or used replica Legree elbows over the SMC. But it's a tiny nitpick. I mean, for the most part, the pack overall has really grown on me, and I really like that iteration of it a lot.
So I'm opposite. I like the switch under the ion arm. I always felt that that's where Harold Ramis was reaching to personally.
Yeah.
I liked that addition. I liked the addition of the strain reliefs over using the.
Yeah. Those are really great.
Outside of that, I hated that all the throwers now have orange hat lights embedded into them, or their equivalent. That used to always just be like my magic marker for finding the superhero, and now everybody will have it. And I don't know if that's just me being upset that the superhero isn't as special, but that was one of the things I found a little frustrating on the new packs. Mikhail, how about you?
Well, I mean, a lot of the points that you all mentioned. I mean, the heat. I like the heat sink because it's such. It's this mystery part. I mean, maybe it's because we have them. We can like the heat sink and not complain about it. The strain reliefs are really, when I go back and look at my other packs that just have the split loom boots, they look kind of, I don't know, they're just not as fancy as those strain reliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of the extra wiring. It gives it that really cobbled together look. I do like the switches now that I have them in the pack wired up. Not like the first, but now that I have them, I can. What's a detail you didn't mention? I really like the new loom to the thrower with the scuba hose and the kind of the rubber hose, just that really cobbled together look. It's visually a little more interesting than just the split loom going into the mouse hole.
Yeah.
Well, I also didn't like.
I actually like the quick connectors too on the.
Yeah, I was just about to add the wand connector, the Nutric connector specifically. I think is a really cool addition, and it makes so much sense. I
was actually really sad that they didn't have them on the OG packs. Actually.
Yeah, I thought the OG packs were a little light in terms of like they should have had the similar connectors and such.
I liked the OG packs more, but I think that's. I like the Phoebe pack. I think it is a visually incredibly interesting pack. But I think one of the things I always like is when you go out into the community as far as like events, is that everybody can have a pack that has a little bit of their own character to it, but still be accurate depending on what aspects you're looking at. And now it's just like, all right, well, everybody has shotgun grips on their Proton Packs. Everybody has cobbled together, wires going to, a clipper valve or that kind of thing. As far as other details, I didn't like it. It really comes down to the construction. I don't like the welded on L brackets. That just seems dangerous to me, and how thin the motherboard is seems dangerous to me. Using Rothko frames seems dangerous to me.
Yeah.
I know time and money is a big thing, but I feel like that's something that a Hollywood studio would have been able to get, genuine Alice frames.
Well, I look at it too, as with anything, especially like even the original props, these were made to last the duration of filming.
Yeah,
that's the only purpose they serve. So,
well, and also Ben Eady touched a little bit on the Alice frame issue, and it was that they had to build about 20 packs altogether, and being able to maintain the same continuity, because the logical thing, like if you had unlimited time and resources, get a bunch of LC2 frames and straps, kind of the semi-hero style, those would have worked fine. But getting them all that are the same shade, the same hardware, I can see why they would want them all to all be uniform. they just didn't have the time to hunt down, or let alone LC1 gear, to hunt down all of that. I would have liked to see the super straps, though, return. That's odd that we didn't get those. But
Matt, this question comes from Ron Daniels. Do you feel that the addition of special effects on fan packs, such as vibration or exhaust, detracts from a replica, whether it be accurate to a certain scene or idealized?
I prefer not to have all the extra bells and whistles, but I know a lot of people enjoy having the venting packs and even the vibrating motor in the wand. But actually, the vibrating motor in the wand is now screen accurate to the Afterlife pack. So
they had a vibration motor.
So technically, yeah. So, but as far as I'm concerned, I always prefer, like, it's the same thing with like electronics, as I was mentioning earlier. Like, I rather have my electronics look like what you see in the film, even if it isn't as exciting as what everyone else has. So I know a lot of people that have all kinds of extra stuff going in their packs, whether it's venting, whether it's like a boombox mode where all the lights bounce and stuff to the music that you're playing out of your pack and all that stuff. I think the only thing that I add that isn't screen accurate is the audio, mainly just because, if you're walking around a convention and seeing people, like, they kind of want to hear the sound.
Sure.
So, but other than that, everything else, I try to keep it to what was in the film as best I can.
Our next question here comes from Lanny White, which is, how do X-ray shells hold up to modern known accuracy? And so my existing pack that I no longer use is an X-ray shell, and they're really pretty shells. They're very, very pretty, but they are almost at this point what I would consider an idealized, exaggerated shell, in which proportionally you look at it, it's a proton pack. There's definitely no doubts there. There's no glaring issues, but when you get into the fine grit of it, the cosmetic fins are way too big. I know for a while Julian was trying to actually rehab an X-ray shell into a more screen accurate piece and just got tired of grinding the fins down. Yeah. And that's kind of the big takeaway. I almost wish I had another X-ray shell to build my IDW pack from, just because its proportions are almost now kind of cartoonish with how thick the cosmetic ribs are. But outside of that, still makes a fine pack. Still makes a really, really good pack. You put some quality parts on there. They're incredibly sturdy. The build process behind the X-ray shells is still pretty standard to how shells are made today, which is that resin gel coat with a fiberglass backing. And he didn't go too overboard or underboard with his fiberglassing, so you're going to have a very sturdy shell that's going to last up for years. I know mine is still rocking and rolling, even though I don't wear it anymore, and still looks almost identical to the day that I built it, aside from repairs, such as, I know, Matt, you helped me put a new infilter on that guy at one point, and of course a newer wand that actually, the wand looks trashier than the pack at this point. But
is this the pack you built in like 2009? Yeah. So it's the one I think I've witnessed you working on it and fixing it every time you've ever worn it to Dragon Con.
With all 12 C-cell batteries powering the X-ray light kit inside. Yeah,
that's the last time I saw it. Last time I went to Dragon Con, which was like 2017. I remember going up to your room and you were like scrambling to find a screwdriver to take it apart to change the batteries out.
Yep, that sounds about right for Dragon Con.
Yeah.
I would love to see like 3 or 4 packs made from like some of the first generation like fiberglass shells that we had in the community. Like, have one of Sean Bishop's original ones. Shells there, as well as like X-ray shell. Same thing with was Java Monkeys is that fiberglass or was that vacuum form?
That was vacuum form. I still have some remnants of a Java Monkey vacuum form shell.
I'd love to see a Java Monkey one, and then hell, we'll throw in another like one of Austin's shells too that he vacuum formed as well. I would love to see like 4 of those packs lined up.
It would be interesting.
That would be cool.
I've thought for a while of trying to track down people that still have older, pack shells and resin parts and things like that, and kind of just
my buddy Adam Marish, his pack that he still wears, he actually got one of the first gen Sean Bishop shells.
Oh, nice.
And he very specifically, he knows it's inaccurate, but he at this point, but he wanted to have it just because he's friends with Sean. And I remember building that pack with him. And I made some corrections to the shell. Like I actually cut some stuff up and reinforced stuff just to kind of get dimensionally a little bit better or a little bit more accurate, but still relatively the same thing. So that's one Sean Bishop shell that I know still floats.
I just think it would be fun to collect this stuff and kind of archive it as is. Don't build it, just leave them raw, but like kind of have a history of the evolution cool. of where we've come from.
I have some X-Ray and Ken Hugel bumpers in a bin.
So this question is going to be hard really for any of us to answer. It comes from Mike Witt, which is, what's going on with GB fan shells? Was the mold sold off for someone else to make them or retired? Was it retired because there are new, more accurate molds in the works? Unfortunately, Mike, none of us are AJ Quick. So that's not really something I could give you any kind of insight. I know the GB fan shell, it's based off of a Biggie shell. Is that correct, Matt? Yeah. Okay.
That's correct.
But AJ always has a lot of projects in the works. So I'm not really sure. I wasn't even aware that he had stopped production on his shells. But I would be surprised if he was done. Just because I'm always surprised at how often the GB fan shell gets overlooked.
It's a nice shell. It's a really nice shell.
It is a nice shell.
I mean, I know there's no video to it, but I have a game pack that's over here that I built that I had permission from the people that made the original Biggie 330 shell. However, I was allowed to modify it to make a cast of. So that the base of that pack prior to me modifying it was one of those shells.
And then Matt, and I know you sold me a Biggie shell.
Yeah.
Which is going to be a pack one day.
Someday.
So I'm sorry, Mike. We're unfortunately not the right guys to really answer that question. But I would keep your eyes out on GB fans, or maybe send a message over to GB fans to see if there's an update on that.
Yeah, I don't even know who was actually casting those shells for AJ. I don't know if he had an actual company doing it, or if there's a fan that he lives near.
It's an actual company that was doing them, so he was getting them professionally cast. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get one, just because, I mean, commercial casting, you're looking at a pretty uniform, kind of cool piece there.
Yeah, they usually use like vacuum bags and stuff like that to do
that. These next questions come from Derek Osborne. Aluminum wands. Dan had mentioned a change in Freaky Geeky's wand design. What were your favorite aluminum wand runs? And on a personal note, and Matt, you might be able to answer this, how does the Crix Heavy Props wand hold up to modern known accuracy?
I actually have a wand from him coming sooner than later. I actually commissioned him to do one right before Christmas, so I haven't actually handled one yet.
Okay.
So I'll let you know when I actually have it in hand. So it depends as far as like accuracy goes. It depends on what you're comparing it to. Are you comparing it to a GB1 thrower, or are you comparing it to an Afterlife thrower? Because the most accurate Afterlife thrower is one from RJ. As far as like if it's GB1/GB2, I still think RJ was probably making some of the more accurate ones, but he was also like laser cutting some extra stuff, like to remove some material just to make it like lighter as well. So that's not accurate to how the original ones were made, but I know RJ is currently he's been commissioned to make some GB1 accurate throwers. So I'm curious to see how accurate those are when they're actually done. I'm not sure about the heavy props one. Like I said, I have one coming, but I don't know how. We'll see how accurate it is. It look like in the photos I have, it looks relatively accurate, but I have to compare it to the other throwers I have.
Mikhail.
I also have some other fan-made ones from. I think I have one of my throwers is from JPA.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And then I think I also have one from Vince Nordone as well, somewhere laying around as well. So as far as how accurate they are, I've never actually set them all next to each other and taken measurements, but they like in hand they feel pretty relatively accurate. So,
Mikhail, have you ever gotten a chance to handle any of the heavy props, aluminum wands, or anything like that?
I have not, no, actually, and I have to admit, on my packs, I do not have any aluminum throwers. I made my own resin throwers years ago. I made a master and molded it, but I am looking to upgrade and get into aluminum. But that's one thing I have yet to yet to tackle. I know I'm such a rube.
Austin, how about you, bud?
I've never had an aluminum thrower. I've only played with other people's.
That's inappropriate.
Well,
You've played with other people's
Yeah.
wands?
Whoa.
Gross.
I got the tips
I
to
gotta-
extend and everything.
Oh!
I got to be honest. I didn't even know that Crix was making wands, so that was news to me. I know he was doing the aluminum parts for Ghostbuster fans, and they're good. I mean, they're really nice parts.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I really couldn't comment on the Heavy Props wand because I didn't even know they existed. Is that something that he offers, or is that a more of a commission based?
I mean, I have his personal email and stuff like that, so
Whoa.
I just email him like, "Hey." Well, it's because we were friends. Like I've he lives out in Denver, in Colorado, but I've known him for like, I don't know, 12 years now at this point.
No,
He still calls me baby girl when he emails me. I saw someone else post about in the Spangler workbench that he was making throwers. So I literally just messaged him. I was like, "Hey, bud, I saw someone mention that you were making these. Can I get one? Because I can't get a thrower anywhere else." He's like, "Sure, anything for you, baby girl."
Aw.
Yeah. So I have one. I'm just waiting for it to be done.
So I have one more Proton Pack question, and then a couple of fun questions from the community that will wrap the episode up. Which is, as pop mechanisms go, who's making the best as far as reliability and movement matches what we see on screen?
I mean, I think the most accurate ones to what was in the GB1 packs, but I don't sell them. So
I think
well,
RJ is the only person I am aware of that sells a pop mechanism, but
I have one of RJ's kits for that, and it's pretty solid and well built. You know, a little better engineered than the welded nails together, and yeah,
that's what I have in this pack.
Better engineered than the push mechanism that the screen throwers use. I think. I think the pool ends up with a much more crisp snap to that barrel, to the barrel pop, and then keeps it in place a lot better. Whereas you can even see in some of the behind the scenes videos for Ghostbusters that the barrel would pop and then settle a little bit just from that push mechanism.
And that mechanism binds up a lot too.
Yeah. Well, it's that
that's
long, unruly spring. But I feel like there's other makers that are starting to get into barrel pops.
I know Throwing Chicken, because I'm friends with him on Facebook too. His like personal Facebook page, and I know I love
him, Matthew.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say that I know that. Well, I don't want to like throw his actual name.
No, I'm not
I don't
asking
want
you
people
to
like.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Well, the point I was trying to make was he's been posting on his personal page of a 3D printed version of a popping mechanism that he's planning on making with his latest version of his thrower, because he's also been showing pictures of the 3D printed mold that he's making as well. So he's like creating like he's like, he definitely has a couple of things in the work. As far as when he's going to sell those things, and if they're going to be sold separately or together, I don't know. But he's definitely been messing.
He's actually, which I'm really excited about. That's one of the things I always love about Throwing Chicken, is that he's never rested on his laurels as far as his designs go. And so it looks like he's warming up for the TCV4 thrower, which even though I'm not terribly partial to resin throwers anymore, I would love to get one just because I love supporting his work. I have, some of his ghost traps, and he does really exceptional resin work. I don't think there has been anybody else aside from Throwing Chicken, probably Nicotron, that does such quality resin work as him.
I mean, even his molds are beautiful.
They are.
Yeah. I think that's partially because of the 3D printing he's doing for the mold support and stuff.
Yeah.
So some fun questions. Matt, how many Proton Packs can you build before you upset your wife?
Well, I built one last year as a commission, and I've been building my Phoebe pack. So, and someone asked me earlier a month or two ago to build them 3 Proton Packs this year. So we'll see. I'm I'm gonna say at least 3.
At least 3, yeah. I think at least 5. My wife's big problem is I have not finished her pack. Again, it's the weather. I have to have good painting weather. And she's like, oh, well, you can work on this and you can work on that. I see you working on your pack all the time. Oh, man, she gets me right over the head.
What kind of pack are you making for her?
It is a Ben of Kent 80% scale kit. It's a really, really easy, accessible kit, and really you can bolt it together. But again, if you don't have the right weather, painting it is just out of the question. And that's the big thing, is it needs paint right now. But it's a nice kit. I'm still throwing back and forth if I'm going to back up the shell, because it's just a polyurethane casting with fiberglass. But it's so small that I wonder if, because it's smaller and more compact, it's contributing enough structural integrity rather than a larger pack, so its shock would go through it a little bit more. I'm not sure. Another fun question.
We gotta strap you to a office chair and drag you around with it and see how, if you fall on it, how it holds up.
Foam fill it.
We'll film it and then never release the video of that.
Yes.
Spilled Milk 2 coming soon. Filming in 2014. Another fun question from Ron. How do you decide on a name for your pack? Do any of you guys name your Proton Packs?
Not really. I mean, I put my name on the name tape that goes either on the Alice frame, or for GB1, the little piece of masking tape. I just put Lynn on it, nothing fancy.
I mean,
see, my issue is, like, I've been replicating specific packs, so I call them by the name that we as a community call them for the actual one. So,
Dan, I don't know if you remember, I started a little trend back in like 2010 for a little while of people naming their Proton Packs and creating Facebook profiles for them.
I still have mine.
I still have the one I did for the little mini pack, but I don't have access to it anymore. But the profile still exists.
Yeah, the profile still exists for mine as well. And I had named it after an ex, so now I just call it the Big Bitch.
My first pack I named Kelly, after Kelly Kapowski from Saved by the Bell.
I remember that.
So I believe Ron Daniels named his pack Kira. There was a handful of us that just, like, we all just started naming our shit.
There was. And looking back on it, I hate that we're admitting that.
No, dude, I think we ought to bring it back.
I almost want to, like, name one of my packs after, like, a username from, like, GB fans from, like, 2010 or something like that. Just, like, the funniest one I could think of. Like, the first one that came to mind was, like, Donkey Punch.
Oh, no. Shout out to Matthew Wassant here. He's not going to listen to this, but we're gonna rub that in his face later.
Well, he would start listening and then get distracted by a football game.
Oh man, that was
how about
time.
This isn't so much prop related, but it's more like the acting, I would say, from James Moore, which is Proton Pack firing style. Do you think the 4 original Ghostbusters ever discussed or compared how they would act the firing? And given the 4 slightly different styles of particle throwing, ghost wrangling, all cannon, blah blah blah, how do you do it? He likes Venkman's and Spengler's style most of all. Matt, how do you fire your Proton Pack?
I mean, one of the things that I remember hearing them, I forget exactly where I heard this from. It was either in a commentary thing or just, like, listen to Dan Aykroyd rambling on some in some interview somewhere, and it is an autistic rant. But they often they compare it to, like, almost like firing like a fire hose. Mm-hmm. So I almost take a stance like that, where it's like you lower your center of gravity, kind of lean back into it, and then I guess it's similar to, I guess, how Dan kind of holds it. Dan Aykroyd holds it. Yes. Dan's stance.
Which is a little ironic, because the thing I noticed when watching Afterlife, and it blows my mind, but Ernie, of course, is putting an effort to look like he's, firing.
Bill Murray.
That's why he's in the foreground.
Bill Murray looks bored.
Well, Bill Murray, actually, there are some shots, but he's way in the background. But he's making that, like, Bill Murray face that he makes when he fires, like, especially, like,
the oh shit
yeah.
face.
I was upset that he didn't dick throw like he did in Ghostbusters 2. Like, that was always my favorite stance in the courtroom, where it's basically a phallic extension of himself, and he's just holding the thrower right there.
Well, it bothered me in Afterlife. He was holding it way too delicately, like with like 3 fingers just kind of lightly holding the grip a bit. It did not look right.
Well, and Dan Aykroyd, of all of them, seemed to just not do anything. He just sort of stood there with it, like holding it still. And I was like, Dan, what are you doing? You're usually the one that's like all into it.
Probably because he already broke the damn pack.
They probably told him, just stand there. Don't do anything.
Well,
stop breaking stuff.
I suppose from a directing standpoint, it would have been weird, I think, for Jason to try to tell them how to fire the Proton Packs. I mean, you can't give that direction. Yeah. They're going to fire them how, they're the Ghostbusters. That's all they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Could you guys pretend like we're paying you more? Thank you.
Well, guys, that really wraps it up for Session 7, our roundtable for the Proton Packs. Matt, I really want to thank you for being here. Mikhail, also thank you. And thank you guys so much for coming out and re-recording this session. I definitely believe that this was actually even more fun than the last time. And we had a lot of fun when we tried recording this the first time. Austin, do you have any final thoughts?
We will have to do this again on a different episode. That's
on a different episode with a different topic.
Exactly. Yes.
Mikhail, any final thoughts before we close this one out?
Oh, not in particular. Just, everyone keep building, keep researching, and just have fun with it. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed there. And Matt?
My only final thought is I know Austin wants measurements for the tripod traps, and maybe I can sort that out for him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby girl.
Because because I've handled the real ones. So.
And that is all the room we have for Matthew Burkit and his humble brags.
And done.
On this episode of Black Firehouse
I've
Podcast.
handled the tripod traps and you haven't. That'd be a good t-shirt.
I would love to have that shirt.
Well, and then we need to have one for Adam made that says, I own them and you don't.
Tripod traps.
Well, guys,
actually, so it's funny. Adam has commented that if he ever takes his Ecto to a convention, he would want to use the tripod traps as like the marker, like the velvet rope marker around.
I would like to know where that is so I can be the fella that goes and steals the tripod traps from around his Ecto.
If I were him, I would put those out like on display somewhere, but I would label them as like as seen in the background of Lois and Clark: The Adventures of Superman.
And Star Trek.
As seen as calibrating a transporter for Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we have gone way over time, but I think it was well worth it. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in to the Black Firehouse Podcast. Session 7, our roundtable and third part of Proton Packs. You can always listen to us on Spotify, our RSS feed, or, of course, on, not Google, Apple iTunes. That's the one. You can like us on Facebook, Black Firehouse Podcast. You can also take a look at us on Twitter and Instagram. Or if you want to join the conversation, you can join us over at Spengler's 1984 Workbench. Again, all of our reference material is generally pulled off of the amazing Ghostbusters reference library, which is also available on Facebook. If you like us, leave us a fantastic review. I can't wait to have our next episode. It looks like this one has successfully recorded. So in that, I will leave you with, keep building something and have a wonderful day.
As a duly designated representative of the city, I order you to cease any and all supernatural activity and return forthwith to your place of origin or to the nearest convenient parallel dimension.
Okay, so I'll see you later, huh? I'll give you a call.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
2 in the box! Ready to go! We be fast and they be slow!
Ray has gone bye-bye, you guys. What have you done?
For whatever reasons, Ray, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we were destined to get thrown out of this dome. For what purpose? To go into business for ourselves.
For the